I'm your host, Doreen Steenland, and today we're going to be speaking with Jennifer Kautsch. Why don't we just dive right in? And you said that this movement was birthed at Christmas. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So, y'all, like Doreen said, I'm from Texas, so I got to throw a y'all in there. So, y'all, I am 51, and I was a little bit later in life drinker. I don't know if this will resonate with everybody, but for me, I really didn't drink in my much younger years. I actually started drinking as a young mom in my young 30s. That's kind of when the mommy wine juice culture was just starting to kind of hit the trend, with the marketing and messaging being geared towards women, to rosé all day. And this term wine o'clock was kind of an idea that came around 5 o'clock, wine o'clock. And I just bought right in, hook, line, sinker. I just thought, what a great thing. I can socialize with this drink in my hand. But I will tell y'all, and this is a vivid memory in my mind, because I'd had a few drinks, of course, in my 20s, but nothing memorable and nothing lasting. But when I took a drink in my young 30s, it was really different for me. I was working in a very, very high stress, high anxiety, home-based business. So I was at home with my kids by day and working in the evening out and about all over the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex doing these intense meetings. And I found myself literally at a bar at a happier hour, if you will. It was really not a happier hour, it's a happy hour after one of these really long, stressful days. And one of my friends said, Jen, why don't you get a drink with us? And I was like, you know what? I typically just got my sweet tea going or my Dr. Pepper because I'm down here in the South, and I thought, you know what? Why don't I? I'm an adult. I'm working hard. I, I'm following all the rules that I learned when I was younger, by all means. And I remember Doreen taking that drink with an emotionally charged, tired, stressed, anxious life at that time. The heat in my life was kind of starting to turn up. And I took that drink, and it was funny. I didn't even know what to order because I was it was just so not my thing. And I took that drink of that white Zinfandel, which is so funny to me now. And I felt immediately the physical relief from my anxiety. I didn't realize how probably uptight I was on the inside because I was managing everything so well on the outside. I was getting her done. I had two very young kids at the time. My husband and I owned a retail store, and it was failing, it was tanking, which is part of why I was doing this home-based business. So I was really in the grind. I was hustling. And it was also a very relational business. So there was a lot of empathy and a lot of relational stuff that was good, but draining. A lot of that compassion fatigue that I know people that are listening right now definitely know about firsthand.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so that kind of started my drinking career, if you will, kind of on this note of, oh, this elixir, this magic potion is going to de-stress me, take my anxiety away. It's totally, legal, socially acceptable. In fact, it's even glamorized, promoted, and encouraged. So that was me in my 30s, catching up with everybody else, building up tolerance,
Yeah.
and also dependence.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think your story is I don't think you're alone in your story. I know personally, I started drinking young, so I didn't just take it up as a young mom. But I understand the building of the tolerance, and I understand going to it for stress relief. So can
Yes.
you just talk a little bit about the lie that we might be believing there?
Absolutely, because it was in my 40s, really age 40 to 45 for me, that I started really leaning on. It went from kind of a treat at the end of the day to a reward to then a habit. and
Yeah.
one that I felt very enslaved by because I almost didn't know how to deal with anxiety, boredom, loneliness, or just how to relax
Yeah.
without it. And I attached so much of what I thought was anxiety to that drink, when really come to find out the science that I've learned about alcohol was very changing, life changing for me. And that is that alcohol actually increases our anxiety. It's the opposite game. Whereas I was drinking to subdue my anxiety, I didn't realize that it was actually magnifying and creating more anxiety because I didn't attach the two together. All I attached was the relief to the drink, not the later anxiety, also known as hangxiety, the hangover the next day after a drinking session, the anxiety that follows drinking. We don't tend to attach the two. We just think we've got more anxiety. We probably just need another drink. And we don't put the two together. So, yes, in my 40 to 45 was probably my most tumultuous years of being a person, being a mom, being a wife, being a business owner. And for me, learning about how it wasn't stress relieving ultimately. I mean, I was drinking and would get that buzz, that high, that relief for 20, 30 minutes max, and then spend the next hours of the evening chasing that, only really to find that I could never feel that first 20 minutes again. And I was just increasing all the chemicals in my body, that everything that goes up, and y'all know this because you know the science, but sometimes we can know the science, but we don't know the science.
Yeah.
And so everything that goes up must come down. And I just thought it was me. I thought it was just me. And really, it was the chemical. It was the actual substance of alcohol itself. It's kind of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And I can tell you, as a person now that's choosing to live an alcohol-free lifestyle, I still have anxious moments, but that's exactly what they are. They're moments. Whereas when I was drinking on a regular basis, which I did, for cumulative, probably 15 years, where I built up to a daily tolerance where I kind of needed my fix, I had much more chronic anxiety. I had anxiety all the time, whether I was drinking, not drinking, or days after drinking, my
Mhm.
anxiety increased. So I really have a real contrast.
Wow. So what do you make of that constant anxiety? Where do you think that that came from?
Yeah. Well, there was the whole chemical aspect of it takes 7 to 10 days to get alcohol and its effects out of your system. So I don't know about y'all, but when I was a regular drinker, 7 to 10 days without alcohol was never happening. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe I would be, quote, good through the week, not drink Monday through Thursday, and then kind of hit it on the weekend. So I was never out of that really detox-retox loop. I
Mhm.
could do it, every evening and try to detox every day, or I could go every week, but it was still the same cycle. So those chemicals stay in your body that produce and support more anxiety. So there's that. And then for me, and you can probably identify as well, the bandwidth it took for me to manage and moderate drinking, which as an addictive substance really does create a thirst for itself.
Yeah.
So me trying to tap the brakes when really my body wanted to mash the gas, that tension, that cognitive dissonance, and that mental tug of war and that tension was actually anxiety producing as well on an emotional, mental level. And so that was also exhausting. So the only way I knew to relieve that was just to use blunt force and just throw a drink at it, which would anesthetize everything, including my joy, my resilience, my ability to do hard things. I just outsourced so much to alcohol that and what's so crazy, and I know that people listening can identify, no one would know this from the outside looking in. I looked like everybody else. I didn't miss appointments. I was, getting everybody taken care of. In fact, if anything, I was over giving, overthinking, overly responsible by day, which is part of why I wanted to check out in the evenings. I didn't have any kind of self-care practice or any practice really of knowing how to treat myself with compassion. I just kept trying harder.
I love what you just said. You used it as a means to check out. Even
Yep.
though you were totally present and active and over functioning basically all
Yes,
day long, you would
totally.
then check out at night. I found the same for me when I was drinking.
Yep.
That was it for me. I needed that space. It was almost, vegging out
Oh, totally.
because I just didn't have the capacity, right? And so what changed for you? Like what what clicked?
Yeah. Great question, because I tried everything. I really wrestled in my relationship with alcohol, desperately trying to get control. I just wanted to make it so small in my life that I wanted to not want it. I'm sure y'all can understand what I mean. I wanted to not obsess about it, fixate on it, worry about it, manage it. I just wanted it to be so small that it lost its value to me. And if I had a drink, I had a drink, but it wasn't my focus either way. And so I had the things that I did try that didn't work are kind of the opposite of things that I did try that did work. For example, I tried willpower. Oh my gosh. And I'm like
Nope.
workout queen, hardcore. I can do anything except for I couldn't do this. I just could not do it. Um, so willpower failed me because it fatigues, it gives out, it is infinite. I'm sorry, it's finite, opposite game.
Yeah.
It's finite, it gives out. So willpower at the end of the day, after I'd made all the right decisions, decision fatigue actually set in. And what I noticed that worked for me when things began to switch in my mind, my mindset, is I started having willingness. And there's a big difference between willpower and willingness.
Mm,
So when 5 o'clock came, I had a more willingness to be curious. I started to use some of the tools that I was learning, like pre-deciding, pre-planning, having alternatives. But I was willing. I think that was the biggest difference early on, is just willpower wasn't working. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
yeah.
But willingness was like, oh, this is more like curiosity, discovery. Like, I'm not trying to just behavior modify here. I really want to get in to the root. So that was a big one for me.
That's so cool. And I think what you're saying is you finally got to a point where you realized you weren't present for the people around you.
Exactly. Exactly, Doreen. I was 5 o'clock. It was almost like,
Yeah.
quitting time, like, and just started to, that's when I would start my bottle breakdown. I talk about this a lot in Sober Sis, how, it just starts with, I'm just going to have a class while I'm cooking.
Yeah. Just one.
For you nurses and doctors out there that work the night shift, I've seen nurses before, which again, no judgment here at all. Let that be clear. No judgment or shame or labels here. But I know that for nurses who work the night shift or
Yeah.
work for 48 hours, I've seen them have a pitcher of margarita at the breakfast taco place in the morning. And it's not like they're drinking in the morning, it's their happy hour. They
Yeah.
just got off shift. And
Yes.
so even then before, and so I understand. So I do. I think it's the willingness and the curiosity to think, is this working for me? Instead of, is it bad enough? Because every time I ask myself, is it bad enough? I just compared myself to somebody who was further down the drinking spectrum, who
Yeah.
was a little bit further down the pitcher plant, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I always could justify my own drinking because it was still in that quote gray area where I wasn't physically addicted to the point that I couldn't function without alcohol in my system. I was able to wait until 5 o'clock. I could go days at a time. I could even go weeks or months at a time, but I was never really free
Yeah.
until I found true freedom.
And that is what I love about your program. I love that it's a non-judgmental environment. I love that it's not about, you don't have to be totally alcohol free to belong to this environment, which sets it apart from AA a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can come there with a curiosity to discover why you're depending on something that cannot satisfy.
That's so, so, so true. And you bring up a great point, which is another thing that I tried that didn't work. And then I found what did work. One thing I tried in an effort to change, control my drinking was rules.
Yeah.
Anybody else out there know what I mean? I tried a lot of rules
Yeah.
where it was like, okay, only drink on the weekends, only drink white, not red.
Yeah.
Only drink when you're happy, not sad.
Yeah.
Only have 3 or less. Oh man, I had so many rules, and I could keep the rules. I could follow the rules until I couldn't. It
Yeah.
was like I could keep the rules until eventually something made me snap or just lose it. Or sometimes it was just sheer just boredom, loneliness. Beautiful day on a back patio. I just didn't even have the tools. So I tried rules. What I found that actually worked for me was less about rules, less about labels, and more about trying to discover my why it was that I wanted to change and have something compelling pulling me forward instead of just running from something or being chased by something. I wanted to go forward towards something that was really compelling me to stay present.
That's so good. And I'm thinking back to what you're saying about going towards something, and the statement you made earlier about willpower not working.
Mhm.
And I think that our medical professionals can really relate to being totally drained dry, where there is
Yeah.
no capacity left. And that's when willpower fails us, right? When we have nothing left, we just kind of give in. We give in
Yeah.
to the urge, to the cycle. So, Jenn, what are you noticing in your groups as far as medical professionals? Are you seeing a lot of medical professionals come through?
Oh, I am. And I'm so glad you asked that because having had the opportunity over the years now to work with so many women, I really do see that there are a lot that are really our frontline workers that are, I
Yeah.
mean, with the pandemic that we've been through and just everything that y'all have been through these last years, I've really watched the numbers increase of women who say, I was a social drinker before, but through COVID and everything that y'all have been through, which I really have no idea. I guess I have type 2 understanding because I really think I just thank you for your service is what I have to say. Thank you for all that you do to support our communities and our cities and our hospitals and our homes. But it's taken a toll. It has definitely taken a collective toll. Um, in fact, I was doing some research before you had me on because I just wanted to be even more educated. And I read that there was according to a journal, the Addiction Medicine Journal, 69% of medical professionals or those in the medical industry have used drugs or alcohol. And I'll put alcohol in the drug category. I know socially we don't tend to think of alcohol as a drug. It's almost like we've got two different lanes here, drugs and alcohol, but really alcohol is a drug. And 69%, and that's probably a low number. That's the admitted number. You have used alcohol or drugs to relieve stress. 69%. I would bust out and say it's probably higher.
Yeah.
Um, and y'all have probably heard that quote, physician, heal thyself.
Yeah.
And the rate of prescription drug abuse is higher than the general population among those in the medical community by 500%. And so I'm going to put alcohol in that category. And again, not everybody that drinks alcohol is physically addicted, emotionally or mentally addicted, but in and of itself, it is an addictive substance. And what I've noticed in sober cis is women that maybe didn't struggle with alcohol abuse or dependency before 2020
Yeah.
have discovered that they do now. It switched something Well, we know what it was. It was additional stress, longer hours, more uncertainty in the world.
Yeah.
All of that has really added to. And yes, I've seen it in teachers, and I've seen it in the medical profession, probably the most. And
Yes.
I do, again, y'all are front line
Mhm.
um, in our communities doing two of the most important jobs in the world, our children and our health. And I think you've taken the hit for that in a lot of ways, and have maybe not always been understood or supported. And I think alcohol, because again, it's so glamorized, socially encouraged, that is actually undermining the care and support that you actually do need
Yeah.
from us in a community of support, where there isn't more harsh judgments, labels, and rules. You're exhausted. I mean, if I can just get in your head for a minute, if you're listening to us right now, you're spent, you're exhausted, you're doing the thing, you're really out there doing it. But as you're taking care of others, who's taking care of you? And we tend to think, well, I don't want to bother anybody. Or maybe I just need to get it together, try harder, going back to that willpower thing, instead of connection. And what Doreen and I have found just in being involved in our sisterhood, again, of like-minded women from all over the world, all different ages, walks of life, places on the drinking spectrum, just sober curious. Some women know for sure they just don't need to drink at all. Wherever you are on there, we have found that connection really is the antidote to addiction.
Yeah.
The antidote to addiction is not sobriety. It's not being sober. It's actually connection. There's a great TED Talk on that very topic that I would highly recommend. Google it. Um, but that is actually the secret sauce in our sisterhood, is connection. Because once you start talking about the very thing that you tend to hide in the workplace or isolate from people because you don't want to be judged and you don't want to be labeled, when you start opening up about the actually very common struggle of drinking sometimes more than you want, drinking in excess, drinking when you didn't even want to, because it was your habit or your coping tool, when you can just say that out loud and not get a label or be told to do better, and you can just be accepted and understood, and people know you're doing your best, you just may not have all the tools you need, then it changes things.
Absolutely. What I love about what you just said is you brought us full circle to really the theme, I believe, of our whole summit is about connection. It's
Yeah.
about being in community with people. It's about connecting with your colleagues. It's about connecting, and all of that happens in the right side of the brain.
Mm.
Right. And so
Yep.
when we are in this cycle that you talk about, the detox retox cycle, it's all happening subconsciously and from
Yes.
this little track in one's part of your brain that is just on autopilot doing its
Yeah.
thing, right? So what we're talking about is accessing the part of the brain where we get to connect with others, connect with ourselves, connect with God if you believe in God.
Mm.
And that's where all good things happen, right? That's where we get to experience joy. That's where we get to experience peace. And it's a beautiful thing when you're doing this in community. And so we've been talking through this whole summit about um, connection being so important to us, bringing joy back into medicine,
Mm.
right?
Absolutely, because I got to tell you, as a person who does not have a medical background, who's actually kind of a scaredy cat and kind of fearful of all things medical, because, for us regular folk, it's really scary with needles and like what's going to happen in here and bright lights and am I okay?
Yeah.
I think your capacity to really have joy and have that spark back that allows you to give from an overflow instead of give from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And because chances are, if you're listening to us, you've got a heart of gold. I mean, you've
Yes.
got such a big heart. And again, I just celebrate that and think, the best way you can really take care of others is to take care of yourself first. It's like put the oxygen mask on you before you help, your neighbor or your kid. So same here. I think just prioritizing you is not selfish. Self-care is not selfish. It's actually a really great thing, and you're totally worth it. You're
Oh,
enough and you're worth it.
what a nugget there. And that is huge because our people are caregivers. They give
Yeah.
and give and give to everybody and often put themselves last. What a beautiful way for us to wrap this up.
Mm.
Um, just putting the icing on the cake there for us. Thank you, Jen.